What are your guys' favorite apparels? So, like I said, if you guys are new, we really talked about, the impossible is nothing and really talked about those points. So we're going to get in here and get to know Becky in a minute. Hi, Langer. KG, thank you for the subs. I appreciate that. Dingo, how are we? Welcome on in. Welcome, guys. I want to thank you guys for coming in tonight. All right, guys, so let's welcome back Becky. I think her audio is working now. Let's give her a warm welcome. Exclamation point Becky in the chat. Hi, Becky.
Hi, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't think that was my fault, but I will take the L on that one.
It's okay. I always told you I'm not a very tech savvy person and, always kind of have some tech issues. So,
yeah. Wow.
But Becky, it's so nice to meet you, and I'm so honored to be able to interview you. You're such a leader on and off the field, and it kind of seems a little surreal to me. I know you get this a lot, and I've really lived my life for sports, and I think being a little bit on the shorter side, I always became that impossible is nothing, but I really, really, have always looked up to, athletes like yourself. And I remember seeing you in FIFA, and we'll get to that. But, I want to say, Becky, I know we talked about this a little earlier, but I did a little bit of diving, and I know that you're a big avid reader. You like movies and you like cats. Can you tell me a little bit about your cats or your cat or the story behind that?
Oh, yeah. I would love to. I'm definitely a foster fail. I've got 2 cats, Missy Elliott, Olive Oil. I was playing professionally in Kansas City, and an animal hospital, some people from the animal hospital were part of our supporters group. And so they were at our games, and they just had people foster animals for them. And so I fostered a litter of kittens, and then obviously foster failed, and took them both with me and flew them here to Portland, which was a traumatic experience. I would never want to fly anywhere with my cats again, but we did here. And we're very happy, our little fur family.
That's amazing. And, same with myself, my cat Noelle just kind of came up on my doorstep. So I'm really big on, she broke in. She said, "Hey, Mom, I'm here."
You.
She chose me. Yeah. So, I also love animals, and just they're great. Adopting. I adopted a dog, so I saw your bio and I said we got to talk.
So, yeah, what kind of personality does Noelle have?
She's spicy. She kind of she runs the house. She lets me know how it is, but she's kind of like me, blunt and to the point, and but she's cute. She's going on 6, so
same.
She does run it. Even my chat saying that she runs it.
Yeah, I have an alpha, and she definitely runs everything.
How old are they, by the way? Your cats?
They just turned 6.
That's funny. Noelle was 6.
I know, they're in the prime
I think
of
she's 6. I know, right? So, there's so many things I want to ask you, and chat's going to ask you, and I know this is kind of cliche, but I know you've had such an extensive career. I mean, your accolades are amazing. And, what kind of got you into soccer? I mean, I know you're in that defender role. How'd you get into that? And I know you had brothers that kind of toughened you physically and mentally, but what kind of got you into soccer and sports?
I would say my parents threw me into a bunch of sports. I'm from a town called Olivet in St. Louis, Missouri, and they have this association. And so you can play softball and basketball and volleyball and soccer. And so at like 5 years old, just at the local park down the street, they would have organized sports. And so I played all those sports growing up, and soccer is just something that I really took to. And most of it, I was playing with boys. And so I was always like the girl on the boys team. But it really was something special because they were also my school friends. And so we actually had this great bond going back from like 5 years old. And I'm still really close to a lot of them. They take credit for my soccer career, which is fine because they really did help me out a lot. But that's how I started. Yeah, is more my parents wanted me to be well-rounded and to play sports and, play music. And so that's what they threw me into.
Nice. And
Yeah.
I kind of saw some of your bio about how you were in band, and I found that story so funny because there's a lot of similarities. My parents, kind of made me do the same things, and it looks like we grew up around the same time. So I just got a kick out of that story where you're like, "Well, I want to be a team player." So that was really really funny.
Oh
So,
yeah, my band director was very scary in high school.
and what instrument did he play?
I played the flute.
Nice.
What did you
Yeah,
play?
I mean, I was a saxophone player.
Oh, nice.
Like I said, in high school, or middle school, you always want to get involved. But, for me and like you, sports was always the passion there. So, by the way, chat, if you do want to submit questions, please put them in chat. We will get to them. But I do have a couple of questions for you, Becky. But, growing up, especially around the same time as you, given that, sports were kind of male dominant, what kept you going in sports? Like, what was that it factor? Like, I want to do this as a professional athlete. Soccer is for me.
I think just because I loved it so much. And when I started to get serious about soccer, there really weren't a lot of avenues to continue it beyond college. And so I remember I went to the University of Virginia, and I remember getting into my senior season and really kind of panicking because I was thinking to myself, like, I love this too much just to quit it. Like, what am I going to do? Like, what avenues, what country am I going to have to move to keep playing? I just can't give it up. And luckily, by the time that I graduated, there was a women's professional league, and then other leagues across the world were starting to pop up as well. So I was very fortunate in the time that I finished school.
That's great. And, it's same here. I mean, growing up, I think, not having many, women athletes. I mean, there were some, to look up to, but it's amazing how it's changed. And, I've been following what you've been doing for a while, especially with the pay scale with women's soccer. But one thing that I really want to ask you is, congratulations, by the way, on being women's captain and, reaching, I think it was 200 caps. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of caps.
It's a lot of caps. So being a captain of the U.S. women's national team, how has that changed your approach to Activision kind of in and outside the sport? How has your sense of responsibility as a role model kind of shifted?
I would say that the women's national team has always been a program that has fought for more than just what's on the field. And it's kind of a mantle that every generation since the inception of the program in '85, the players have willingly taken on. And it's always an opportunity. I like to say it's an opportunity, not an obligation, to really fight for those that need it off the pitch. And so whether it's pay equality, trans rights, Black Lives Matter, like all those things, like we're willing to take up and fight for and to use our platform because we've been gifted with this amazing platform and we really want to do as much as we can with it. And so as a captain, a leader, it's easy sometimes to get focused and just want to focus on soccer and just be a soccer player. But unfortunately, that's not kind of the state of the world. We can't just show up and be a soccer player because there's so many things that are still hurting us and hurting, our teammates and our families. And so we really are quite happy to take on the fights of other people as well.
And I think that's amazing because, what you guys are doing in soccer, you see the WNBA and other things and it's just not there. And, like Adidas says, regardless of your gender, everybody should have these opportunities. I mean, you work just as hard as anybody else, and you dedicate your whole life. So with that said, I know you're very busy, and you do a lot of activism and you're on the field, but what kind of things do you do to decompress, outside the season, in the season?
I game. I definitely am a gamer and I use it a bit more as like an escape. I read a lot, hang out with the cats, but yeah, I'm definitely an introvert. And so after you give so much of yourself and all your energy, I like to do those things to kind of like recharge my batteries. But yeah, I would say gaming is definitely something that I really go to.
That's great. And I see the books behind you. I'd be really interested in knowing, what is your, favorite books or authors or even some of your favorite games?
Well, games is probably an easy one to go with first. Love Zelda. I mean, I grew up on like old school Nintendo because I had two older brothers, and so Zelda. And now I'm really getting into Tomb Raider, and played Metroid Dread, Hollow Knight, Dead Cells. Like, yeah, I'm really into platform games, but Dead Cells right now is like so. It's like just like, oh, I'm getting so close, but I just can't do it. So it's a lot of fun though.
My chat is asking which Zelda was it, the original or?
Oh, so if I had to choose my favorites, like the original, Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, and then by far Breath of the Wild. Like Breath of the Wild is such an amazing game, and I will fight anyone that says otherwise.
Yep, everyone. That's awesome. Yeah, and you know, I think that, you know, even for myself, you know, I think video games have always been a staple, and you know, it's such a great way to decompress. But you know, somebody that's, you know, I'm into a lot of documentaries. What kind of books are you into, or you know, what kind of inspires you?
Books for me, I'm actually really into sci-fi fantasy, and so that's kind of the genres that I really go to. A good document, or not documentary, a good biography or nonfiction, like Quiet by Suzanne Cain. Like that's been a life-changing book for me.
Yep.
Books by Adam Grant, like I really like. Give or Take, I think that's one of my favorite ones of his. So yeah, some self-help books every now and again are really nice too.
Nice.
Yeah. What's a favorite?
You know, I just love, you know, autobiographies, you know, as far as the sci-fi stuff, you know, my dad's a Trekkie, so I've always been into that. But, you know, I really look up to people like Robin Roberts. I know she just had a new biography and I saw her speak. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the things that I do in my downtime, including gaming.
Oh, yeah.
So my dad's saying yes, sci-fi in the chat.
Perfect.
So Becky, I got to ask you, how are you feeling? I know you had a pretty significant injury. You tore your meniscus. You know, I wanted to ask you how you're feeling. And, you know, injury is a big part of being an athlete, you know, through wins and losses. And what do you tell yourself and your teammates when you're recovering?
Yeah, this is my first, I would say, major injury where I actually had to get surgery. And I was hoping to make it throughout my career without it, but of course, that's not how sports go. So it happened about 2 months ago, and I have nothing to compare it to. And so it's tough because I'm, you know, feeling all these new things, and like, is that pain normal? Is that pain normal? So there's a lot of uncertainty around the injury and a lot of doubts and fears that can kind of creep up. Like, will I be able to get back to where I was before? Is it always going to hurt? You know, like all these things that you can really kind of spiral into the negative. And for me, being around my teammates and like rehabbing that whole process, just taking those moments during the day to be really grateful for things. And I like to say that I have a get to job. Like I get to be a professional soccer player, which is like my dream. And so everything that I'm doing, I'm keeping that as my mindset. Like this is something I get to do, and I'm going to max it out. And yeah, the injury process and recovery is really a roller coaster, and I try not to get too high or too low.
Right. And, you know, I can relate, you know, in high school, you know, I had a very bad injury for my shoulder. So I can definitely relate. I had the surgery, and, you know, it's definitely tough, you know, especially trying to get into sports. So somebody in chat actually asks, by the way, chat, if you want to put in questions, please put them in the chat so we can get to them. How do you deal with emotional battles when you get into the funk in your mind?
Yeah, that's, I think, always an ongoing thing that you have to work on. For me, I know that taking the moments of gratitude and happiness that I find in each day and like really appreciating and acknowledging them, I think really helps me. I also do affirmations, you know, in the morning or throughout the day. I work on breathing tactics, which can help with anxiety and with pain management. And so there's all these little tools that I've kind of gathered over the years to really help me. And some of the time it's just asking for help. So in sports, you know, working with a sports psychologist or even a psychologist if you need it. And so sometimes it's just asking and trying to find the right resources for you.
Yeah. And I think mental health is really important, you know, it's, you know, no matter what you do. So I can't imagine, you know, the pressures of being a captain and going to the Olympics and, Even the World Cup, I mean, does that add a lot of extra pressure, or is life kind of prepared you for those moments?
It's both. You kind of work your way to those major tournaments, and you hope that you've done everything in your preparation to prepare you for those heightened experiences. And it's tough. We like to say that we apply pressure to one another in all the environments that we play in, so that every meeting, every practice, every game, like we're always bringing our best. And so when it comes down to those really scary moments and high intensity moments, like you've felt all those things before, that pressure, like you've lived it and it's become more comfortable. But then you also get into a world tournament and you're just like, wow, every spotlight is on us. Like, this is insane.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of have to go back to like, trust the process. Like, you put in a lot of work to get here, and all you can do is your best. And then you have to leave it on the field. And on some days it's not enough, but you hope that it is.
All right. So I have a couple questions for you. By the way, chat, please put in your questions. I think it's great. So with that said, what are some of the biggest obstacles that you've overcome your career, and how have you overcome them?
Well, I think there are, obstacles with performance, like when I just wasn't good enough. And so, sometimes it just comes down to like coach's preference. And sometimes, I am not a stereotypical center back defender.
Right.
I'm not super fast, super strong. And so I have to use my brain a little bit more. So I'm more of like an analytical center back. And some coaches just don't like that. And I've definitely throughout my career have had coaches that are just like, you don't fit my system. And you're just like, okay, that's just how the cookie crumbles. But some off-field obstacles, I've been in a very long fight with our federation for pay equality. Since basically I joined the team about a decade ago, it's been something that we've been fighting for, kind of closing the gap on pay and working conditions. And up until very recently, we actually made huge strides. We actually had to file a lawsuit against them for pay disparity. We just got a settlement agreed to, and then hopefully we're going to be signing a collective bargaining agreement very soon that will be equal pay, which would be, huge for the sport. But hopefully would also echo into, other workspaces.
Absolutely. And that was kind of my next question I wanted to get into. I know that they had that $24 million in equal pay settlement, and you were a major part of that. So my question was, what was your initial reaction, and what does this mean for the hope for the next generation of women in sports?
Yeah. My hope for the next generation of sports, I hope that the federations and the team owners and just the organizations, they can see this now as a precedent that it can be done. I think for so long, the talk has always been, well, that's just not how it's been. Or the talk is about, revenue generation and those types of things. And it's like, how do you expect us to get the same revenue when you're not investing in us at all? You're putting us on second class fields, and we're doing second class travel and like all these things that really affect the product on the field. And so we're hoping that we can just be kind of that precedent that's like, hey, it can be done and it can make us money. And so my hope is that will kind of echo into other people's thinking and other people's practices.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank you for paving the way, and giving, the next generation, hope. It's such an exciting, it's not the end goal, but it's just the beginning. So, it's really, really great. So kind of switching gears here, Becky, the chat wants to know, we know you like pancakes apparently. And they said, what is your pre-game ritual? And what do you do? And what are your favorite foods, before a game?
Yeah, so I am of like the anxious variety. And so sometimes it's hard for me to eat on game days. So I don't go really crazy. I think I get more nervous as the day goes on. And so I try to front load all my calories basically. So a huge breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, everything that I can put in. And then I just love breakfast. And so if I can have pancakes as my pregame meal as well, I would do that. But oatmeal is huge, some fruit, basically carbs and all the good things that you can put in. But really the most important thing is hydration. So just making sure you're drinking as much as possible.
Yes. And, I said that earlier, I'm kind of the same way when I get nervous. I have a tendency, to kind of lack on that. But I got to ask you, what are your favorite type of pancakes? Do you like
Ooh,
chocolate chip or?
yeah, I mean, I could go with some chocolate chip, probably not on game day, but blueberry, sometimes just plain, and then you just slice up some bananas and stuff. So I'm not like too crazy about the pancakes on game day,
Yep.
or the crazy pancakes on game day, but I can probably shove a few in though, definitely.
And kind of bring it on the food, I know you've had like an extensive career. I knew you were in various places, DC and Kansas City. I mean, which one of these cities has kind of had the best food? And I'm curious to know because I haven't traveled as much as you, but which city
That's a
kind of.
great question. I would say, like, I love coffee. I am a huge coffee
I
drinker,
saw
and
that.
so
Yeah.
that in itself would put Portland, I think, above all the other places that I've lived or played in. And Portland also, it's like the city itself has a lot of character, and there's just a lot of independently owned businesses. And so there's not a lot of chains. And so I always joke that you can basically find like any artisanal item that you want here in the city. Like if you wanted artisanal pickles, like you could find it here.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I'll give Portland the edge, definitely.
Yeah, I know next year the NFL draft was down in Kansas City. So I said, maybe I'll go down there and try some new food. I heard the barbecue was good. I
Fantastic.
heard it. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
definitely recommend that.
So my chat wants to know, how often do you travel? I know you're so busy in soccer, and I know you guys travel everywhere, but do you travel, in your downtime whenever you have it, or how about that?
Yes. So we only have like maybe 4 to 6 weeks at the end of the year. That's really just for us. There's no soccer for club or country. And so me and my boyfriend Zola, we always try to do one huge trip at the end of the year. And we usually do Central or South America. And so like Colombia, Chile, let's see, Mexico, Belize, Panama. So yeah, we've been to some really great places. And it's just so fun to go on adventures. And it's also, my boyfriend doesn't like cold weather, so we never go over to Europe. We always go south to where it's still warm.
Yeah, I feel you. Living in New England, the weather is just so cold. I'm sure you've been over here, but
Oh,
it's nice to hear, and live kind of vicariously through other people, especially with, not being able to travel. So that's amazing that you get some time, to kind of relax, and, you're very busy, and I know that the off season is so short. So we have another question in chat. Chat, feel free to keep putting questions for Becky or myself. You guys are doing great. Becky, what are your top 3 moments in your soccer career if you had to pick 3-ish?
oh my gosh.
I know
Really
you've been playing soccer for a long time, and you know.
Top 3 moments in my career. Okay, I'm going to go with some obvious ones. So I'm going to say that, 2015 World Cup win, the 2012 Olympics gold medal. And then kind of a random obscure one is I had gotten in with the national team for like 2 camps and then released back to like a youth team, U23s. So I was out of the national team picture for like 2.5 years. And I randomly get a call from the coach at the time. I was like going into a movie theater to watch a movie. And I was like, maybe I should check this. And so I checked, and the coach at the time, Pia Sundaga, was like, hey, there's been an injury at camp. Do you want to fly in to camp tomorrow morning and be like our alternate? And for me, like, that kind of changed my entire soccer trajectory when it came to the national team. And I was like, yes, Pia, I will be in. I will fly in tomorrow. And from that point on, I was pretty much like a regular, and I really shouldn't have been a regular, but I somehow played my way onto a bunch of rosters and then just kind of never looked back.
That's amazing. I mean, was 2012, was that kind of the start of your career? I know in 2008 you joined the team, but was it 2012 when you got that gold medal?
2012 is the gold medal, and then I was on the 2011 World Cup team when we got silver at the World Cup, but that's kind of like when I got back with the national team.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah. And, Becky, as I said, it doesn't take away, my soccer career was kind of cut short because I was playing goalie and kind of got kicked in the face. But it doesn't take away, my knowledge from the sport or, my passion for sports. But what made you, have you always been a defensive player, or did you play some offense?
I think when, you probably remember this when you're young, like everyone was basically a center midfielder or an attacker. And so at some point the coaches are like, look, we got to put you guys in other places. And so I was one of the
Yeah.
players that wasn't quite good enough to be the number one center midfielder. And so they moved me back to defense. And it just took, like, it was like, I was made, like my calling had been found, like I was a defensive player and I love defending. And whenever I have defenders around me that are like, oh man, I'm a defender, I'm always like, no, you get to be a defender.
That's awesome. And it seems like you're a real knit and grit kind of defender, which is amazing. But I do want to bring up in 2016, FIFA included women's team for the first time. And I know you were in that yourself. I think one of the top 10 players. How cool did that feel? And do you ever play FIFA?
I don't play FIFA, and I always feel like such a traitor that I don't play FIFA. But honestly, I was like so honored in 2016 that they started including women's national teams. And I remember like the whole fanfare about like getting the graphics done for us and getting to see what it looked like and just to be in the game and to be represented for the first time. And then I heard this like really cool stat maybe in 2016, 2017 saying that like our team was one of the most played teams in the game, which is like, which is super cool. Like, so to me, the greatest part of it was just the representation that like we were there in one of the most played sports games ever.
Absolutely. And chat wants to know if you could choose to not compete in sports and went into the esports route, what game would you compete in?
Oh, I don't even know what are some of the games that get competitions aside from like the e-games.
I mean, if you want to talk about games, sports wise, there's Madden, 2K, obviously FIFA, Rocket League, and then, some games like Apex or Call of Duty. Would you ever see yourself competing in, any of those maybe sports games, or is that not really your thing?
I would probably lean more towards like Call of Duty. Like I played GoldenEye growing up. I played Halo in high school. So I think like I would
that just brings me back.
I know, right? I would probably go more first-person shooter game.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So guys, keep bringing in the questions. They're awesome. So everyone wants to know, what is your second favorite sport next to soccer, if you have one?
Oh, okay. Playing wise, it would be probably volleyball.
Let's say playing or watching.
Oh, watching is probably F1 racing. That's become like my new thing. I like watching the F1.
Nice. Do you have a particular driver? Just kind of watch it, as a whole? Or?
I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan. I have to admit, like, I think being able to maintain excellence for as long as he has in itself is like quite the accomplishment. And I also like the rivalry between him and Max Verstappen. So I like that there's like hero and the antagonist, and the Netflix Drive to Survive. Like that has been so awesome to watch.
Yeah, and like yourself, I started getting back into Formula One if I can get up on Sundays in time, because the time difference is, 5 hours. But, I love Hamilton. He's a great guy on and off, the track. So I do follow him as well. So, all right. So with that said, we've talked about a lot, Becky. I feel like I could be here for hours just asking you questions. I mean, this is amazing. So this is a question for myself. What advice, would you give women or younger girls who are inspiring to be athletes, whether it's soccer or whatever that is?
Oh man, I would probably say that you deserve to be there. I think we get at a young age stuck up in, do I deserve this? Am I good enough? And I think that can really hurt women's and young people's confidences, and they kind of drop out of sports before they've really gotten a chance. And so I would also say make mistakes, like be willing to not be the best and to learn from mistakes and to try things and be okay with that. And I think when you give yourself that grace, it allows you to feel those accomplishments. And sometimes they're like small little accomplishments, but they build up. And I think when you get kind of addicted to those accomplishments, you want to stay in the sport. And I think right now it's just to stay in it. And yeah, like I said, feel like you deserve to be there because you do.
And that's a great message, Becky, because, you know, back when I was growing up there, it was kind of a taboo, you know. I think nowadays there's so many more resources and people like you and social media to kind of get that message out there. So my next question is, what does it mean for you to be a woman in sports?
What does it mean? I take it as like being a badass. Like, I am so grateful that I get to be a woman in sport. And I also think it means that, you know, you're fighting not just for yourself, but for something a lot bigger than yourself. And that's like the collective. And, you know, one person's success should be shared by everyone's success. And there's, you know, there's enough pie for everybody. I think sometimes with women, it seems like we feel like there's only enough success for, you know, one or two people, but we need to grow that pie so that everyone can share in it. And so it's knowing that you're part of a greater collective, definitely.
And that's amazing. And, you know, I think, you know, when this is all said and done and when your career is over, obviously you do a lot of active things that we've talked about. What are your goals beyond playing soccer? You know, when you decide to retire, I mean, what are your goals down the road?
I definitely want to stay in sport, and I would love to stay in soccer. And I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like, but I know that I would love to make soccer more accessible. And so underserved populations, I think that could be something that I would really like to dedicate time to, because I think there's already so many amazing organizations out there that are doing that. And so to help that, you know, to lend my voice to those kind of things, I would feel, you know, like I was really doing something good.
That's amazing. And did you have any aspirations of maybe coaching per se in the future, or just kind of not? I know a lot of athletes are, you know, weary when I ask this question, but, you know, any kind of management or coaching, or just kind of what you just said?
I'm like intrigued by coaching. I think it's very difficult being a coach. I think it's more difficult than people really understand, because it's a lot of, you know, tactics, but it's also like man management and like taking care of, you know, the people that are playing for you. And, you know, front office, like maybe being a GM or, you know, working front office for a sports organization like that sounds really awesome as well. So I don't know yet. And I know, because I don't know, that playing soccer is still my focus and like what I want to be doing. But I just love soccer and sports so much that I really do want to stay in it for, you know, the foreseeable future.
And that's amazing, because you see some athletes, like I oddly enough, I looked up to, you know, some Yankees players growing up, and they get into the GM and then they decide it's not for them. So I think that's awesome. You want to stay connected, and it really seems like you love the sport, and you can tell, because not only are you a captain of the team, which is amazing, but, you know, what kind of qualities makes a teammate a good captain in your eyes? What do they have to possess?
Oh man. I would say that you can have a lot of buckets of leadership. And I think I was very fortunate to be named captain, but I'm also, the teams that I play for have so many great leaders that anybody basically could be named captain and it would run just as well, or, you know, so I'm not sure most of the time when I get named captain. I'm like, are you sure you want to do that? But I think maybe that's part of it, that like I often feel, and I, you know, like I want to do the best that I possibly can, and nothing is ever going to be good enough. And so maybe that quality that I'm not going to be complacent, that I'm always going to like strive for excellence, and to make sure I bring my teammates along and make sure that, you know, they're being treated and, you know, feel good and can be the best that they can be. And so maybe that's one of the qualities that can get me, you know, named as captain.
Well, I was kind of looking at, you know, some of your previous teammates when they talked about you, which is very highly, and they said, you know, you just are such a leader, and, you know, you're very passionate about what you do. So, you know, I think it's great that, you know, you were, you know, obviously elected captain, and that kind of leads me into the next thing, I guess. were you always kind of a leader? I know you said, your brothers were an influence on you. Got a kick out of the story where they would fling you off the couch. I saw that.
Yeah.
I just had that in my mind. I didn't have any brothers growing up. So did leadership kind of come to you, or, is it something that just kind of developed when?
I mean, my brothers, they're much older than me, like 8 and 4 years older. And so I definitely was like the guinea pig. And so I had to like toughen up pretty fast. And so I think that's maybe something that has carried me along, and the fact that like I think I lead by example. And so no matter like how tough the day is or how tough the training is, like I try to stay as consistent as possible, and just like, sometimes you just kind of like tough and grit through it. And so I think that's probably like, if I had to say my leadership style, it's definitely like lead by example, like be the team that you want to see. So that's I probably will give my brothers a little bit of credit for that, but like not too much.
Well, it's got to be tough growing up, with 2 brothers. It probably, if helped you physically and mentally, right?
Yeah, I mean, talk about being kind of overpowered. And so I had to be like, try to be a little bit smarter. They would steal my stuffed animals all the time, and I'd have to go on these missions to like steal them back. So I'm like planning my paths to their rooms and stuff. So yeah, they probably helped me get a little bit smarter, got to survive on the streets like that.
That's funny. And, have you always had a lot of support, from your family growing up, with playing soccer? Or do you come from kind of like a sports family? I know you said your parents got you into sports, but, I know for myself, my parents say, where do you come from? Because none of us really like sports, but, did you really come from, a sports environment?
I would say that my brothers dabbled in sports, and I think my parents were always very willing. If we were like, hey, we want to try paintballing, they'd be like, okay, we'll put you in this paintballing group. Yeah. So I would say that I am so fortunate in my family and how supportive my parents, especially, driving me everywhere on the weekends for sports, and just like seeing them at all my games, no matter if it was, 3:30 on a Thursday in high school and I'm playing, across the city, like they were always there, and they traveled to my World Cups and to my Olympics. And so I really cannot ask for more supportive parents, because they have been excellent.
That's amazing. And it's a good thing to have. And I know a lot of, people don't have that. So, it's good to hear that you had that support. And speaking of World Cup, I know we talked about this. Chat did have a couple questions. They want to hear more about your World Cup and Olympic experience and what it's like to play in them, since they're so epic. I know you talked about how, a little bit, but, give us a little bit more details, I guess, on how it goes and, all that. I feel like there's so much behind the scenes than just playing a game.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's funny because I've been really fortunate. I've been to 3 World Cups and 3 Olympics. And for the World Cups, that's like the pinnacle of women's soccer. Like it's the tournament just for women's soccer. And I remember in 2011, I had just kind of remade the team again. And I felt like I had nothing to lose at that 2011. It was in Germany. I wasn't getting any playing time. And then all of a sudden, one of my teammates gets a red card and I'm thrown into the semifinal of a World Cup. And honestly, like the pressure of that, I was just thinking like, don't screw it up for your team. Like whatever you do out there, like do your best, but don't screw it up. And then what is so great about 2015 is that it was in Canada. So it almost felt like a home tournament, but without the pressure of having it based in the States. And so almost every game was like a home game. You would see so much red, white, and blue in the stands. And so that was really amazing, because it felt like we always had like max support at all the games. And then fast forward to 2019, and, we had won in 2015. And so we were like, reigning champions. And that was the tournament in 2019 where you almost felt like you were playing, but playing not to lose early on in the tournament. And that's not how you want to play. You don't want to play not to lose. Like that's a lot of stress and burden on you. And it also, that tournament, so many different things happened. We had the president at the time tweeting at our team about losing, and a bunch of other things, the pay equality lawsuit. Like it was just like a tournament that had a lot of external pressure. And we really felt like we earned the win in 2019. We had to play the best teams. We played in France, in Paris on a Friday night, like hostile crowd, Everyone's expecting us to lose because we lost to them earlier in the year. So that 2019 to me, like we had to earn it. And it's hard to describe these tournaments sometimes because we're like a traveling circus, like, and the ecosystem of a team is so temperamental and sensitive that if anything goes wrong, it has like all these reverberations through the rest of the group. And so it's a very like, it's tense time, and like team chemistry is so important, but it's like, you're kind of on a knife's edge. Like it can go either way at any point. And that's like kind of scary, but it also, when things go your way, makes it just so rewarding.
Well, that's just an amazing answer. And I know in 2019, you guys did win in 2019, correct?
We did, yeah.
And I know you were so prideful. I remember that moment and just seeing it on social media and just being here interviewing you is just crazy. So, I could ask you probably a million more questions, Becky, about the Olympics, because I love the Olympics. I cover them on here, and just such an awesome experience along with the World Cup. So before we close out, we have a couple minutes. What is your next, when is the next World Cup, and are you going to be competing in the next Olympics?
The next World Cup is 2023, and that's Australia, New Zealand. And so we actually have qualifiers this summer in Mexico. And then the Olympics would be in 2024, but I don't know, like it's not up to me if I get to make the teams or not. I would love to be there, but every single training camp is basically a tryout. And so I have to keep trying out and keep making the roster for the next foreseeable future.
Well, Becky, I think you are the, definition of impossible is nothing, overcoming people that telling you can't, to getting cut, to going to the team, to going back, and then being captain, and then still having to fight your way through. I mean, that really is the definition. So I just want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for letting me interview you. And it's been a pleasure. And I wish you the best of luck. I hope you feel better with the injury, and I hope to see you out on the field, hopefully this weekend. You said there's a game this weekend.
Yep. Thank you so much. I have really enjoyed being here. I have never done anything for Twitch, but you're amazing. I love seeing women represent on new platforms. And so keep kicking ass.
Thank you, Becky. It was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.